Tonight, a KXAN in-depth report. After last night's downpour, our lack of water may not be top of your mind. But this live picture of Lake Travis shows the drought is still a crisis affecting you. The dry ground soaked up so much of the rain that the lake level is only up a couple of inches, and it will quickly start dropping again. Tonight I'm going to tell you about a little-known weather pattern discovered so recently it's not very well understood. But what we do know, it could stretch our drought to the year 2030. Lake Travis in the 1950s at an all-time low during our area's worst drought ever.
Unlike most droughts, it ran almost the entire length of a decade.
George Bomar knows that dry piece of history well. He wrote the book on Texas weather, literally.
Creeks and streams dried up, reservoirs dipped to record low levels.
Central Texas suffered severely back then, and a third of the state's rural population disappeared. Along with them, nearly 100,000 farms and ranches.
Herds were reduced to almost nothing. Crops wasted in the fields.
But why that happened is something researchers didn't fully understand until lately.
At our research weather observation station.
And if you ask the state climatologist, history might be ready to repeat itself.
You can measure the intensity of drought.
Dr. John Nielsen Gammon studies recently discovered long-term ocean patterns, the Pacific Decadal Oscillation, or PDO, and the other, Atlantic Multi-Decadal Oscillation, or AMO. When waters along the west coast are warm and waters in the Atlantic are cool, Texas gets more rain. Lately, it's been the exact opposite. The Pacific has been cool and the Atlantic has been warm, causing more droughts.
It's not paranoia in Texas. We really are drought prone. And we might still be in drought for another 10 or 15 years.
Imagine 15 years of paying much higher water rates and rarely watering your lawn. If the past is a guide, that could be a reality. Scientists now say it looks like that ocean effect was in place in the 1950s when Lake Travis was so low. And before that, the Dust Bowl in the 30s when blowing dirt covered many parts of West Texas.
Right now, we're in the worst phase in both oceans.
Yeah, the last time that happened was in the 1950s. This drought right now, by my reckoning, is probably the only second of the 1950s drought in Texas recorded history for severity.
And it could be worse this summer if we don't get more heavy rain this month and next. Lake Travis is already near its record low. So is Lake Buchanan further north. Other parts of Texas are feeling the effects too. Like Lubbock, massive walls of dust have hit the city many times in the last few months, perhaps part of a future edition for Bomar's book.
What does the hill country and our part of the coastal plains become?
It's going to look a lot like the Pecos River Valley of West Texas.
And describe that.
Average rainfall about half of what we are accustomed to here. 15 inches a year if it's a good year, maybe less.
Now, those ocean patterns cycle between warm and cold about every 30 to 40 years, but in researching this story, I found that it could be much worse. About 1,000 years ago, that ocean cycle got stuck for several centuries. But here's what's in your immediate future. Lakes Travis and Buchanan are now 36% full. When they hit 30%, Austin Water will implement Stage 3 water restrictions, which means watering your yard every other week. The LCRA says that record low could happen by July. Online right now at KXAN.com, we've listed what that means for you and your family, things you can do to plan for an extended drought, and links to other cities in Central Texas so you can find out when they could have stricter limits. Now, this may all sound like doom and gloom, but, you know, if we're lucky, there could be some light at the end of the tunnel and could happen in just a few months.
That was a classic example of a horrendous drought being ended almost overnight. It rained everywhere in the state of Texas, and it rained buckets. We were talking in terms of feet rather than inches.
Tonight at 10, you don't want to miss the conclusion of our in-depth report. Meteorologist David Yeomans will tell us about a weather pattern that we believe is setting up right now and could mean at least a temporary end to our drought.